Well, welcome back to the deeper dive version of 26 Minutes with David Cohen here with you. And our guest is Cindy Ashton. We go back a long way, you and I.
I know.
I know. I had hair back then, I think. Whatever.
I don't remember. I just remember you being a beautiful soul then, and you're a beautiful soul now.
Thanks. You as well. But your zest for life was just like, I'm going to use a word I don't use often, was scrumptious, you know?
Oh, that's a great word. Well, thank
Yeah.
you.
And that was even then, like, and yeah, you just had that joy for life. And I want to actually talk to you a little bit about that. So here in the deeper dive. So welcome back. You had to choose a lot over your life.
Uh-huh.
You had to choose life, you had to choose to heal, you had to choose the career the career probably chose you. Um, you know, and I want to refer to author and thinker M. Scott Peck. And he would say,
Right.
he wrote the book, The Road Less Traveled, and you took the road
Great
less
book.
traveled. You chose to heal, you chose your voice, you chose to meet life head on. What are the challenges one might face by taking this route? And how do you keep that inner critic away from you choosing to live life fully and as an adventure and as play? So, yeah, what are the challenges one might face when they go that route less traveled? And and yeah, how did you keep that inner critic away from saying, "Oh, Cindy, you can't do that"?
Oh, the inner critic was there. I just put it.
Still is.
But yeah, it's the willingness to let go. It's the willingness to let go of your marriage if you need to. It's the willingness to let go of your job. If it's making the hard choices. It is facing your choices. It's taking full responsibility for everything that shows up in your world. I had a situation in business a few years ago where my gut feeling, this person's like, I want to work with you. And I was like, a hell no. My gut feeling was a hell no. And for months, this person would reappear every few months. And they're like, I really want to work with you. And I was like, a hell no. And then one day, I was very vulnerable. I was going through a very hard time. And this person said, I really want to work with you. What's it going to take? And I said, yes. And that one decision within 2 years completely destroyed my entire life. And
Mm.
I mean, like, I lost my retirement, I lost my savings, I had to go to court, they committed fraud, they did all these crazy things. And then, so it was just that, like, I literally lost everything. I think I just had a small group of friends who knew what was going on that supported me through it. And most people would say, yeah, but he did this to you, he did that to you, he did that to you. It's being willing to take full responsibility for your stuff and releasing the shame and the guilt and understanding that you're human. Because believe me, there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of guilt, and dozens of people actually got hurt because of this situation, because of this choice that I made. And that was the hardest reckoning for me, to know that dozens of people got hurt because I let this person in my life. Because I'm smart, I know how to make money, I knew I'd make all the money back, and more. But it was interesting because at the end of the day, it would be easy for people to say, yeah, but look what he did to you. That's victim. It's more like, Cindy Ashton, you had a gut feeling and you still said yes. And then as you were seeing things going out of control, you continue to try to have conversations with this person. You continue to not hold your boundary. You continue to allow them to have repeated behaviors. And that was the moment where I had to go, wow, talk to yourself. What the hell? Why did you make those choices? And how are we going to change this? And I took full responsibility, and I tried to make it up to the dozens of people that got hurt. I was never able to in some ways. And, and that was something that I had to come to peace with. But I also had to come to peace with that they made their choices to be in this crazy that ended up happening. And that was hard for me. That was really hard for me. But at the end of the day, as long as you are placing blame on other people, you are not going to grow. You take responsibility for your choices, and you look at why you made those choices, and you change the inner work. And for me, it was unresolved trauma that was sitting there that didn't believe that I deserved better, or didn't believe that it was okay to speak up. There was still some stuff lingering. And and I look back now to where I am now because that happened and I truly faced my choices and I took as much responsibility as I could. My life is like phenomenal now. And I don't make those choices anymore. But it really is making the hard choices. Like when I left my marriage, that was devastating. I truly loved that man. I truly, truly loved him. I cried for 2 years because I didn't want to leave him. But again, there was a mismatch of alignment, like in terms of values and lifestyle. And we had talked about all these things beforehand, but when we were married, suddenly it became a different thing. And again, that was really hard walking away from the person that I loved the most. I don't know. I think it took me years to get over it. It really did. It took me years to get over it.
Yeah.
But again, I had to face myself in the mirror. I still remember looking at myself in the mirror and saying, wow, you must really, really hate yourself that you allowed this situation to happen. Again, taking responsibility.
Mm,
So I would say those are the two big things. And it's not, and yes, you're going to work through guilt and shame, but understand that there is no right and wrong. We're simply on a journey. And I wish somebody had told me there's no right and wrong. Because I grew up for many reasons believing that, especially because I was very sick growing up, that, oh, I must be a horrible person. Because I would go to church and the church would say, well, you're all sinners and da da da. So I thought, wow, I must have, what's wrong with me? This is why I'm spiritual potpourri and not religious now. I'm like very spiritual, connected to something bigger, but not defined. And I think it's beautiful if you can find a religion that doesn't shame you.
yeah.
But my specific church, so I'm not commenting on all of Christianity. My specific church was doom and gloom, blame, shame. And, really at the end of the day, there's nothing to be blamed or shamed for. We're all on this path, we're all on this journey. It's an adventure. If you start to view it as, oh, there is no such thing as perfect. I don't need to be punished. It's about being reflective and learning and facing yourself and facing your choices and making the hard choices, like leaving the person that you love the most in the world.
Yeah.
And I have not loved anybody else since him. And it's been 23 years.
Yeah. I went through that too, the divorce and the marriage breakup. It cost a lot. It cost a ton,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't have a regret.
Oh, I don't have any regrets. My life is phenomenal. And truly, you know what? He just wanted a nice woman who had a 9 to 5 job, who had benefits, who could stay at home with a bunch of kids. And I'm like, we discussed this before that I'm self-employed. We discussed this before that 2 kids is it. We discussed it before that, and suddenly it's like, well, use your teaching to go back and get a real job. And I'm like, it's like, what? You get married and then you want to change me? It's like, okay, not going to happen. And it's not making him wrong. We had 2 people who truly loved each other. That there was a misalignment, and it's being willing to walk away and not make the other person wrong. And as far as I've heard, he's gotten remarried, and I'm like, that is awesome. He finally got what he wanted, and
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. And you always wish them well,
Yeah.
Now you mentioned that you're not accepting, your health issues, and you've healed, physically, but mentally, emotionally, you've healed trauma. How how did this work you've done on yourself, the inner work,
Yeah.
help you heal? And in terms of, where did you have the courage to actually do that inner work? When you met your inner you, what did you discover about Cindy Ashton? How did you
Wow.
have
Well, so a lot of questions, David. Okay.
so how did you have the courage to do that work in the first place? And then
Yeah.
when you met inner you, what did you discover about who you really are?
So when I was 14, I had my last heart surgery, and the surgeon sat me down and he said, well, we've saved your life. You're going to need a fourth heart surgery. At the time of this recording, I'm 48. I haven't needed a fourth heart surgery. He said, you're going to be on medication for life. I've been off medication since I was 15. So that's 33 years. Right. And he said, you got to take it easy. Don't do anything beyond walking. Take general courses. Don't do, keep a nice low key life, because you're restricted. You're going to be sick for the rest of your life. So for me, because I was born a fighter and I was still in the attitude of Cindy needs to fight, that was still where I was. The version of me back then was Cindy needs to fight. Now the version of me is like, I'm going to surrender, breathe, meditate, self-reflect. It's different. I've learned. So I, at 14, went to the library every day. I took out books on health, nutrition, wellness, heart conditions, everything you could possibly think of to learn about my condition. And every time I go to the hospital on a weekly basis to get my vitals checked and to see how I'm doing, I was curious. I'd be like, okay, so talk to me about what the number is and what does that mean? And then I was on 4 pills a day, and I didn't realize it was called intuition at the time. But something inside of me was like, I wonder if I went down to 3.5 pills, if my body would just like adjust. So I didn't tell the doctor. I just, kept looking at my vitals. I was doing the research and I'm like, my vitals look good. And I was changing my diet based on what I was reading. And, I was educating myself. And after a couple of months, I'm like, wow, I've been at 3.5, pills for a couple of months and I'm still stable. Then I would knock the pill down to 3 pills a day. Never told the doctor. I kept this up where I was monitoring myself every week in the hospital. And I just kept every couple of months cutting down another half of the pill and seeing if my body would adjust. I was basically telling my body, giving my body affirmations without knowing it, that your body's going to adjust to this. And after about a year, I said, dude, I'm medication free. He's like, what? And I'm like, and I've been medication free since. A year later, after that surgery, I started taking dance classes against the advice of doctors. And again, because I was a defiant little bitchy 14-year-old. And it was perfect because it made my heart stronger from all that exercise. And because they had cut it through on the last heart surgery, through my back and into my ribs, and like I could not really get my left arm up and down. And taking ballet class, I gained mobility back. Surprise, surprise, which wouldn't have happened without that. And so I was literally healing myself. And because of all the trauma, the physical trauma, we're going to talk about that my body had went through, I was in so much chronic pain and was undiagnosed until about 3 years ago that I had fibromyalgia. That was actually undiagnosed until 3 years ago. And I just knew I was in pain all the time. It was horrible. And I couldn't sleep through the night until I was 29 years old. But thanks to dance, when I danced and I was moving, it was healing. It was healing. And so then I did my degree, as I mentioned. And so my whole life has been, I have literally, this could be an entire book, all the different things I've tried, from osteopathy to really, like you name it, I've tried it, functional medicine to you name it, I've tried it. I have done everything you could possibly imagine to reverse it. And then I've also discovered along the way through my studies and through my exploration that talk therapy is lovely to cognitively understand, but most therapy doesn't remove trauma at the somatic level.
Yeah.
And then I started to discover that there's 10 different types of traumas. We've talked about intergenerational trauma. So I started to learn and again explore alternatives to be able to release the trauma at the somatic level. And so over the years, as of 29 years old, I've been able to sleep through the night. And I eventually got my pain levels down to practically nothing. And once I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, again, I've never done medication. I just was controlling stuff on diet without understanding what I was doing. I just knew that sugar for years was bad for me, so I kept my sugar low. I knew that gluten was bad for me. I just didn't realize that it was helping with the fibromyalgia. So some of it was very conscious, some of it was intuition. I mean, but I've literally reversed illness. And my integrative medicine doctor, she said it's fascinating because if you actually look at your test results over the years, you could see that you have literally reversed illness that should not be able to be reversed. But a lot of it has been to get to the trauma at the somatic level, and that's a piece that people don't realize. They're doing talk therapy for years, but it's not going to do anything if you're at the cellular level, you're still clearing the trauma.
Yeah. Boy, and you remind me of Dr. Joe Dispenza a little bit in terms of
Oh, really?
his approach, right? So, yeah. And what did you discover about yourself in all of that?
That I never give up.
Yeah, well,
That my dream and my vision is more important than anything. The stuff that I have sacrificed in my life, people look at how accomplished I am, and while I appreciate the kudos, they're like, you're so lucky. And I don't believe in luck. I just don't. I just don't. I don't think that people realize a level that I have sacrificed. And I'm thankfully at this point where I don't have to sacrifice anymore, finally at 48 years old. But the level of risks I have taken, the level of sacrifices I have taken, for example, me moving to the US, people thought it was because I was doing it for my singing career. And that was the story that I told, but it was because I had to remove myself from the trauma. It is almost impossible to heal when you are in the trauma and it is not going away. You have to remove yourself. And that's hard. I mean, it's definitely hard because that's very hurtful to certain people in my life. And again, I'm so at this place of peace and love that I don't hold anything against anybody. We're all doing the best we can. But I've made very, very difficult choices again and again and again to change my life, because the dream and the purpose and what I know is true for what I want to create and achieve and leave the world with is so much bigger.
yeah. I've been reading a book about a men's journey, right? It's called Wild at Heart, and blends sort of like spiritual Christianity and modern day psychology principles to the book. And the author is John Eldredge. And in it, he writes that to access the freedom to live fully, like you've done, you also have to surrender to
Yeah.
death, right? And in your journey, you had to face death at an early age, you know, and it was
Multiple times.
did that actually you coming face to face with your own mortality at a young age, did that empower you to live all out, do you think?
Oh yeah, 100%. And when I was 5, I actually did die and I went into the light. And it was very difficult I still remember floating above my body and seeing the surgeons on top of me, like the surgeons and the nurses. And I still remember the green tile. Like I remember everything. That I remember from my childhood. You don't really forget an experience like that. And I
Yeah.
remember being in the light and looking down at my body and looking into the light and making my decision. And when I came back to Earth, it was a nightmare because the other side is all love, it's all peace, it's all lightness, it's all grace. Like it is completely weightless. It is unbelievable. And then you come back to this earth that at the time I believe was so evil and harsh and not the world that I wanted to live in.
Yeah, nobody warned you about 2020 or these past 3 years, did they, back then?
Well, here's a funny thing: is 2020 was nothing for me because as somebody who lives with chronic illness and has until recently, that's the way chronically ill people live, that they go through bouts of being very ill and they don't leave the house for months on end. So I'm looking at the rest of the world. I'm like, oh, this now you're all knowing what it's like to be chronically ill. I mean, it's not funny, but I actually did not get affected by 2020 because I'm used to having time periods where I'm home for months on end and not and fearing for my life and fearing for my income because I've spent my whole life going through multiple surgeries. I haven't had a fourth heart surgery, thankfully, and will not need it. But I've had dozens of surgeries because once you've got a few problems, because I was born with several diseases, not just the heart. And then, of course, the fibromyalgia that went like completely undiagnosed until recently. Um, you understand these pieces and you go through these bouts. So I was like, 2020 is like, Cindy, don't be like, nah, 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 see what I live with? I was like, don't do that. Be compassionate because these people haven't lived through this. And I talked to people like Jason Reed, who's a common friend of ours.
Yeah.
And we had this whole conversation. We're like, what's the big deal? This is like us critically ill. So 2020 really didn't affect me because it was like me living chronically ill, the same fears, the same challenges.
But at 5, when you came back,
Yeah,
you made a decision.
I made a decision to come back. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, did you, in terms of living fully and powerfully and knowing that death isn't the end, like, how did that shape you?
By that point, by the time of that had happened, I was already pretty determined to live life. I was already like, since I was born, because I was born and having a fight when I was born to live,
Yeah.
it's always been that. For me, how it changed me at first was really scary because after that, I started seeing translucent figures and I didn't understand
Mm.
what that was. And when I was 18, I think I saw a psychiatrist and I said, I get very scared because these translucent figures come to me and they talk to me and I think I'm mentally ill. And thankfully he was a very enlightened psychiatrist. And he says, sounds like you actually have because of your experience when you were 5, it sounds like you have the ability to talk to the dead,
Yeah.
like to access the spirit world. And I'm like, oh, he's like, you're a medium and you're a psychic. And I'm like, oh,
My
I'm
thought.
like, well, that was some psychiatrist. I'm glad that he understood that and didn't think I had a multiple, you know what I mean? I could have been on medication. So at that point, I kind of didn't really go into that. It was still scary for me. Like, that's really scary when things come to talk to you and they're kind of like not here, but they're sort of like invisible, but they're kind of not. It's weird. But when I was in my 20s after my divorce, I started to actually research and started to learn how to develop that skill set. And, and I don't do psychic readings. I don't channel people, but it's a really interesting gift that I have. So it changed me. Actually, it changed me in the sense that I now had that connection, but I also remember growing up that I would always feel like something was wrong in the sense that because I had experienced the other side, I'm like, this whole God thing doesn't make sense to me based on what I saw. Because it just felt like light and love. It just felt like light and love and expansive, and it didn't feel like this God that's punishing me, that the God that I learned about in the Christian church, or at least
Yeah.
in my church. Because
Yeah.
again, I want to really separate that because I've got so many Christian friends that are truly love bugs and don't adhere to the doom and gloom. So I wanted to be very clear on that. But yeah, so for me, I was very much questioning a lot as a child and questioning all religion as a child because of that experience. Because to me, it's all oneness. At the end of the day, it's all oneness. And we are all part of the same ocean and we're just individual waves in that ocean.
Yes.
It's all oneness.
Yeah.
And when we remember that, then we remember that anything is possible, that everything is infinite, and that we each have our own path on this planet. So let's be a little bit more compassionate with others
Yeah.
because we all come from that light, whether you want to call it God or universe or whatever you want to call it.
Yes. And we've all gone through trauma, and you said before, generational trauma. I mean, if you think about it, when the Great Flood happened, so many of us went through that. I remember studying years ago at the Kabbalah Center. I got into Jewish mysticism, which was
Oh my God, I've been wanting to look at that. That looks
yeah,
fascinating.
it's a bit intense. But anyway, and they said, oh, in Toronto at the time, that there's a lot of Atlantean souls, meaning there's a lot of
Oh, that's
like,
cool.
people in Toronto have lived through that, through that trauma. It is still a human condition to fear one's own demise, how would you coach
Yes.
somebody else to find the courage to face the inevitable, yet truly decide to live while you're here? Because I see so many people that they don't, they're checking out, they're not interested, they're contemplating suicide in some cases, God forbid.
Yeah.
or they don't have hope anymore. How do you kind of like, how would you coach somebody to say, no, you know what, you got a choice, like live, like do your thing.
Yeah. This is going to be an odd answer. But look at what you're eating.
What's
And
that? What's
I
that?
would look at, I know, I would look at what you're eating,
Okay.
because what you're eating and what you're putting in your body is altering your brain. So when we look at a lot of people who are struggling, a part of it, I guarantee, is because of what you're putting in your body. So if we look at certain foods are going to trigger your brain in different ways. So if you even look at studies, the majority, there was a study done, and I can't remember when this was, but there's a study done for people in prisons, that the majority of people who are prisons and violent offenders have low serotonin. So there's something that they're not eating to get through that blood-brain barrier to raise their serotonin. So if you look at sugar, sugar is like a death wish. I mean, I've been very low on sugar for a long time, which is great for reducing your fibromyalgia and any other autoimmune diseases. But sugar alters your brain and not for the good.
It affects
So,
Alzheimer's, cancer, diabetes, heart disease.
right, all these things. But right, and because it whacks out your system, so it causes more of a stress response in your body. And the more of a stress response you have, the harder it is for you to be present in your body and feel good and feel like you do have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
What you put in your body matters. And unfortunately, in the US especially, there is so much stuff that is in the US food that is banned everywhere else in the world. And from what I'm understanding, unfortunately, Canada is starting to follow suit with that. Um, so people think I'm nuts. I'm at a restaurant and I'm like, where did you buy the cheese that's in this? And they're like the US. I'm like, no, I don't want it. And then people are like, what? And I'm like, because the cheese in the US has RBST in it, which is a hormone. And then I can go into what the hormone does to you. But like, it's not a funny joke that when I'm in the US, I'm a gluten-free vegan. Because and I buy from the farm, because everything else I know way too much of what's in the food. So unfortunately, not everybody has the access to healthy food and has the access to have the money to buy the healthier food. But food does matter, and it because it literally alters your brain. Certain foods are going to cause you brain fog. Certain foods trigger violence. You know, the chemicals in those foods. So if you want to find your purpose, in addition to learning how to breathe and connect to your body and everything we've talked about, part of it is actually doing stuff for yourself, movement as well, because trauma and stress get stuck in the body. Even if you're overweight, you don't need to run 2 miles. Even if you're in a wheelchair, that movement can be just moving your arms and your fingers. That movement could be doing little shoulder rolls. Like i I never have back-to-back meetings for that reason, and I have a stand-up desk so that I'm constantly moving, because movement releases the stress and the stuck energy, and it allows the body to flow. So again, I'm not asking you to run 10 miles. I'm not asking you to go to the gym. I'm asking you to
Yeah.
move and get your brain working, because it's hard to feel good, believe in yourself, and want to take action on your life and find purpose if you feel like shit.
Yes. And what do they advertise on TV? Junk food.
Oh, you know, it's so funny.
Fries. Fried.
I know. Okay, listen, fries are my downfall. Let's be honest. They're my downfall. They really are. French fries are my downfall. But when I get French fries, I get them from better quality places.
Yeah.
Or I'll cook my own French fries and I'll do them in the air fryer, so it doesn't have oil, and
Oh yeah,
I'll
you're
put all kinds of, and I'll give me my air fryer. I air fry everything now. It's really quite silly.
that's smart. You don't need all that. And the oil is not good for you anyway, So
I
yeah.
know.
Now, as we kind of wrap up here, finding
Yeah.
your voice, we know it's tremendously important. However, in business, politics, and society these days,
Yeah.
there's a need to fabricate or spin the truth of our message.
Oh God.
That's about ruthless authenticity and why it's so important to be authentic and real.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everything is so over the top and crazy. And I'm like, can we all take a breather? And there's so much fake news out there and so much
Oh,
position. There's so much posturing instead of positioning. And there's a difference between posturing and positioning.
yeah, it's
So, yeah, go ahead, David.
it's scary, it's like, yeah, and it's
Well, and the way that people are so polarized. I mean, this whole Barbie movie thing, I'm like, I'm not seeing this movie. I'm not getting engaged with this. But the Barbie movie for weeks on end, the fighting over all this, over one freaking, I'm like, can we all take a chill pill?
yeah,
Everybody needs to be right about it. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not watching it. I'm not engaging. Let's be clear.
but
Um,
authenticity is really important for.
it is really important, but the challenge, so we're going to take the Barbie movie, right?
Okay.
So absolutely state your opinion. Absolutely be authentically who you are. And two things, don't make other people wrong. You have to remember we've all been raised differently. We've all been raised differently. We all come with different genes. We don't know what somebody's been through. So you can stand in what you believe in without making people wrong. I literally have on my sales page with this new product I'm releasing. It's not new, it's just redefined. Where I'm like, listen, I'm going to ask you a few questions. If you answered yes to these ones, we're not a good fit, and let's not waste another time. And I invite you to exit this page. And I'm not making them wrong, but let's not waste each other's time. You know, but if you've answered these questions, then you know what? Keep reading. This might be resonant for you. And it's always for me about an invitation versus force. You
Yes.
know, that's the first thing is really being authentically standing in who you are and what you believe without making other people wrong. The second piece is that being curious.
Mm-hmm.
It's like be curious. Because when you get to be curious of other people, it's uncomfortable, but then you start to hear their stories and you understand why they do what they do, where they come from. And then it opens up the conversations and it opens up bridges. I mean, I see some of the biggest issues that we're fighting over for centuries. And I'm like, did you ever think about being curious about what the other person's point of view is and why they have that point of view? And maybe we can come to like an understanding and maybe find a middle ground to find a solution.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be cool?
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
Yeah. Curiosity is a beautiful thing. It didn't kill the cat. It really didn't.
Yep.
Curiosity does not kill cats. Curiosity opens conversations for us to find solutions. And even if
And it opens
it's
your mind. You have that growth mindset.
and it doesn't mean you have to agree with a person. Like when I first immigrated to the US and I traveled to the South, being Canadian, we don't have gun stores or gun stores. We have gun stores in Canada. Let's be clear. Okay. We're not angels. We have our own shit in
Yeah.
Canada. But you don't see driving every 5 minutes that's fine for a gun store. We don't have a gun culture the way that they do in the South. And I remember when I entered Georgia and I was seeing one gun store sign after the other, I was like, Jesus, what is wrong with these people? Like I was being total bitch. And after about 5, 10 minutes of bitching in my head, I was like, did you ever think about being curious instead about why they own guns and why they're like, and so I made it my commitment because I was on a tour for, I don't know, a few months through the South that I was actually going to ask people, do you own a gun? Why do you own a gun? Like, I was just going to ask people questions without being judgmental and just curious because maybe there was something I was missing. And the answers were interesting. And at the end of the time, I came to a few conclusions based on talking to probably 50 to 100 people. And I'm still not comfortable with gun signs everywhere. I'm not personally comfortable with guns. I will not hate somebody that owns a gun. It's not where my comfort zone is. But everybody is allowed to be who they are. And now I understand their point of view. So it's not being curious so that you have to change to them, but it's being curious so you can at least understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, and it's almost like a religion. It's about freedom and rights and also fearing. A little bit of fear in there too. We talked about authenticity and I think we are on a whole awakening to our sixth sense. You already are there, and our intuition, and we can smell and detect an untruth that's being communicated, yet we fear the repercussion if we tell the truth. So I feel the opposite is true. That truth, no matter what, is essential for our growth and forgiveness is the key for that to happen. What's your take on that?
Yeah. On the one hand, there's nothing to forgive because we all have our life path.
Yeah,
And it's just part of our life path. And we've chosen to be on this planet and experience life the way that we're experiencing it. On the opposite end of that, so the first, like I said, there's nothing to be forgiven because you've chosen this. On the other side, it's you were human. So, our human selves, not our spiritual selves. Because let me tell you, when our bodies are gone, we're still alive. Our souls are still living and thriving and being and happier than ever, really, based on my 6 seconds of death or longer, for however long I was dead for. Um, I can tell you, you're going to be very happy on the other side. It's amazing, but don't leave us yet.
yeah, and you don't, you don't pay no rent, no taxes. Well, taxes maybe they'll find you.
I don't mind paying taxes if they go to good causes, if they support other people. But yeah, I mean, but yes, on a human level, forgive yourself. Give yourself grace. I almost feel like give yourself grace is it's a better word.
Yeah,
Because forgiveness still says that you did something wrong versus, you know what, I'm gonna give myself grace.
yeah,
You know,
and
I'm human, I'm trying. I'm gonna give myself grace and I'm gonna reflect and see how I can grow.
here's my last question, other than shameless self-promotion time.
Go for it.
Before we leave, I mentioned I do a lot of teaching work with youth entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What would one bit of wisdom you'd want to share with them if you had a young person 18 to 29 in front of you, to have the courage for them to lead and find their voice, because they're the next generation, like
Yeah. Trust yourself above anything else. Trust your gut above anything else. Your gut will never lie to you unless you're trying to force an intuition. Because sometimes people are like, my gut's gonna, I'm like, okay, that's forced energy. But trust yourself and trust your vision, especially as a youth. We have a lot of parents and teachers, and we've got a lot of people saying, you should do this, you should do that. If something doesn't feel good, investigate that. If something's like, oh, I'm being told to do this and it doesn't feel good, I would investigate what that is. Does it not feel good because you're scared to take action on it and it is the right decision? Does it not feel good because it's actually not the right decision and you feel like you're being pushed? Does it not feel good because it's the right decision, but there's some stuff that needs to be worked out before? Like, take time. Again, it goes back to being curious. Take the time to be curious and trust yourself above all others and above all the crazy that's in the world.
so true. And really, it's a nice way to sort of wrap. What's next for you, and then where do our listeners connect with you again?
Yeah. So for me, I'm expanding my career to be more international. So I have been extraordinarily blessed to be in the media all over the world and to have performed and spoken on a gazillion stages across North America. So now I'm like, oh, what would that look like for me to perform all over Europe? Where would that like? So that's definitely as a performer, that's where I want to go. With a Speak From Your Power, um, the work that I do and that we do as a team is very, very deep. As you can see, it's more than just body language and speaking voice. It's more than just the tactics. Clearly, with my background, I can teach you all the tactics, but it's about finding the truth in yourself and then applying that truth into how you present yourself. So with that piece, to Speak From Your Power, it's continuing to go even deeper with some of the programs that we are, so people really access their deepest truth and then express it through their body language, their voice, their messaging. So we're developing more programs and some fun retreats in Paris and other places in the world where people get
Oh,
to develop
cool.
them. Yes.
So speak from your power, and then also, of course, cindyashton.com.
Yeah, cindyashton.com and speakfromyourpower.com.
Wow, this has been great.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for saying yes, and it's so good to see you. You're such a
So
delight.
good to see you. So long, too long.
I
My
know.
Toronto peeps.
Yeah, yeah. It has it. These past 3 years kind of put a little spanner in the works. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then before that, you I think had moved already to New York, and
Yeah, I moved to New York 10 years ago.
yeah. So
10 years ago.
yeah, we would I think if you were here, we'd see each other a little,
Of course.
more often, or bump into each other somewhere, right? Like we used to. This has been great. Thank you so much for this today. Like, honestly, like, you're a gem, and
Oh,
I'm so happy that you agreed to be here today as our guest. And for those listening, I think you're going to be happy. Remember, 26 Minutes with, and the Deeper Dive show is a show about inspiration. It's a show that honors those who are leading, making an impact, and creating positive change in the planet. I'm your host, David Cohen. Next week, we have a young man, actually, Cindy. He's 23. He's been through his own trauma. He's from Europe originally. Now he lives in Cambodia with his lady friend. His name is Andra Nemchek, and he's gonna talk
wow.
about youth issues, but he's on a mission to spread happiness around the world.
I think that's beautiful.
Mhm.
That's beautiful, David. Thank you so much for having me on.
What a joy. And everybody, thank you for listening. Share, like, comment. We love them, and we'll talk to you soon.